Again, that was kind of funny for those of you who saw that. I'm sure you're laughing right now along with me because I was just streaming without my microphone on, so nobody could hear me. So we're going to go ahead and do this again. So welcome again to my third rendition of Gish Optimized. This is my Dungeons and Dragons optimization live stream slash video blog where we dive into sword wielders and spell slingers for Dungeons and Dragons and try and create some fun and interesting and powerful builds for you guys. Hopefully not game breaking. Please don't take any of my builds to your dungeon masters and go do like crazy game breaking themes. Please respect your game masters, be nice to them. But tonight we're going to go back into the way back machine and revisit a an oldie but a goodie. One of my favorites, the Fighter Mage from Dungeons and Dragons of yore. And this particular build harkens all the way back to basic edition Dungeons and Dragons when elves used to be able to gain some of the same benefits of being a fighter and being a spellcaster, and they wouldn't necessarily gain all the benefits of being a wizard or all the benefits of being a fighter, but they would merge the two synergistically into their own class and be very effective because of it. And so we are going to play on that old theme, which I'm sure you've seen in many games and possibly also witnessed, as I have, in a number of um, media or various kinds of media, such as anime, such as The Record of the Lotus War, DLIT, for example, is based on the prototypical Gish, which was the elf, and then many fighter mages and elves onward through advanced Dungeons and Dragons and second edition and third edition on through to the fifth edition of today. Now, fifth edition today, in my opinion, has a lot of nice throwbacks to the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons. It brings back a number of the things that I really enjoyed about the older editions while not being quite so clunky. And in this respect, particularly with the Fighter Mage, it provides us with a lot of really good options. Now, the build that I'm going to be presenting for you tonight is mainly a wizard. We're just going to dip a little bit into fighter. And because of the wonderful options that the main class wizard provides and its subclasses, we're going to be able to do this and we're going to be able to be very, very effective as a primary wizard with a little bit of a dip in fighter. So let's get into it. Oh, I just did want to mention that I am playing this version of the Fighter Mage in the form of Gaelya the Ghost in Ted Burgess's Icewind Dale campaign. He's running a game based on the Icewind Dale video game and is just recreating the monsters and dungeons, and we are doing our best to survive. We've already died once actually. We went into this orc cave, which apparently I've only played like a part of this game, so I don't really know too much about it. But we went into this orc cave, and there were like 41 orcs or 41 different monsters that were like orcs and wolves and orc shamans and orc archers. And it wasn't like the video game, where the aggro settings are like, at the end of your vision, at the end of like your dark vision. So like your vision goes and you see an orc and suddenly that they alert to you and then they come after you. No, it's like you start fighting and like all the orcs start swarming you. Um, and so yeah, so we were second level and we had to fight like 40 orcs and an ogre, and there was an ogre at the end. Um, and I think we offed about 39 of the monsters, including the ogre, but the last two orcs got us. And so the game master had pity on us and had one of the NPCs come and drag our bodies back um, to one of the main towns. I think it was Koldahar, and so our whole party got raised from the dead, and we've been adventuring ever since with a bit of an air of danger to our adventuring careers because we've already died once, right? So a little bit of a segue into a campaign that I'm playing this build in. So starting off the build at first level, uh, let's just start out with some ability scores. Now, we're primarily a dexterity and intelligence build. We're going to start out with dexterity as our main attribute, but intelligence is going to follow swiftly on. So these two attributes are what we're dependent on throughout the build. We are DAD or dual attribute dependent. And the only reason why I'm bumping dexterity first is because it seems to me that we get a lot more out of it at early levels. And then as we go up in levels, intelligence becomes a lot more prominent, and we tend to need that more. So we're going to go a bit in lockstep, but dexterity is going to lead us off. So starting off with dexterity, we're going to dump 9 points into dexterity. We are using the point buy system. If you are rolling for your attributes, you don't really need to worry about this too much. But just consider that this build is a dual attribute dependent build with dexterity and intelligence. So we dump 9 in and we get 15 starting before our race. And then we're also going to go into intelligence and put another 9 into intelligence as well for another 15 for our start. Now, our third stat that we really need is Constitution. We are a fighter mage, mainly a wizard, so we are going to be rather squishy, and we don't want to be too squishy because we want to be able to use melee attacks. We want to be able to get into the front line, do what we want to do if we want a Nova, and then get out. We're not going to really be a stand and fight kind of character because even though we are going to have some really high defenses and a lot of options for mitigating damage, if a hit comes through, it can really hurt us badly. And we are very vulnerable to critical hits. So we want to minimize that vulnerability by thinking of ourselves more as a skirmisher, someone that kind of goes into the front line, does what we need to do, and then comes out. We're not going to stand there and take the heat round after round after round, hopefully. If we do, we might be in trouble. So Constitution helps us mitigate that weakness, but it's not going to overcome it. It also is going to give us an added benefit of improving our concentration checks by increasing our Constitution saving throws. And we're going to be concentrating on a lot of things. So we're going to want that higher concentration. And so Constitution is our number 3 stat, really makes sense here. Now, for our other 3 stats, we basically have 3 dump stats, and that's Strength, Wisdom, and Charisma. Now, for me, we only have 2 points left for our build, and because we dumped 7 into Constitution to get 14. And so for me, I'm looking at putting the other 2 points into Wisdom. I want to have better Wisdom saves. I want to be able to leverage some proficiencies, namely Perception. So for me, I don't really want to dump wisdom. Charisma and strength seem to be a bit more rational for dump stats. But if you have a different concept, just go ahead. It's not really super critical. But just bear in mind we only have 2 points going into strength, wisdom, and charisma. So last of all, for our race, we are going the traditional fighter mage route, and we are going to choose High Elf. We really want to get access to the High Elf's magic and some of the High Elf's mojo in the form of our Elven long life and our catnap ability and our fleet of footness and the fact that we are a Fey wielder of magic. I just like for this, I mean, we're just going classic. So I'm just leaning into the oldie but the goodie here. That is the Elven Fighter Mage, in this case, High Elven. Now, it also is going to give us some weapon proficiencies, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But early on, this is going to help us in our Fighter Mage mojo sense, help us capture that feel. Now, we get two ability score bonuses. One of them is for our, well, one of them is +2 and the other one is +1. Tasha's kind of changed it to we can put them anywhere, which is really nice. So using the Tasha's Cauldron of everything optional rules, we are going to go ahead and put 2 in dexterity to give us a 17 starting out. And we're going to put 1 in intelligence to bump our 15 to 16 and give us a 16 starting stat in intelligence. So now our full array is 8 strength, 14 con, 17 dex, 16 intelligence, 10 wisdom, and 8 charisma. So pretty solid, and we're looking pretty good for our starting build at first level. Now, moving on to class, we are going to start off as wizard. There is some argument for taking the first level as fighter, particularly to get that constitution saving throw proficiency for our concentration checks. But from my point of view, I think what we're going to do throughout as we level is going to be enough to shore up our concentration. Now, you might not agree with me. So if you want to take the first level in fighter, just be aware that you're going to be one level behind in getting your fireball and third level, wonderful third level spells at level 5. You'll get them at level 6 if you start out first level in fighter. And you won't get another very important thing that we'll talk about soon, that we'll be getting at level 6 until level 7. Now, if you're starting out in a campaign that starts out at higher level, that increases the benefit of starting out as a fighter. But I'm still a little reticent because as a wizard, I kind of want to still have that proficiency in wisdom saving throws. I don't want to be taking spells like, I don't know, hold person and just falling prey to them. I mean, we're going to have some mitigations for that, but we might not always have our reaction available to counterspell, for example, or there might be a lot of wizards on the field, or I don't know, our game master might be just really mean and be counterspelling things a lot. Um, so I just like the notion of having a wizard that has a strong mind, um, for the purpose of throwing off magical influence. Now, of course, you might take a different tact, and that's fine. That is absolutely just fine. These are just kind of minor semantics in the build. But what does Wizard give us at first level? Well, it gives us some equipment that it gives us our spell book. I'm going to take a wand as an arcane focus. I'm going to pick up a dagger. Um, we're going to take our little kit, and I don't know. I might actually trade our kit for some money to buy like a short sword so that I can melee a little bit at first level. We're not really powerful in melee at first level, but we got some tricks, so I might just do that. Um, in addition, we get the wonderful wizard spellcasting and the arcane recovery abilities, which, if we take a short rest over our adventuring day, effectively gives us 3 spells rather than 2, which is really nice. Because we have elf, we also have proficiency in short sword, short bow, and long bow. As a high elf, we would typically have proficiency in longsword, but using the Tasha's optional rules, I'm going to trade that for rapier since our dexterity is so high and our strength is so low. I want to have as many options for dexterity-based melee items as possible. Now for cantrips, we get 3 for wizard plus 1 for high elf, and I really like that. It's just nice to have that extra cantrip, particularly since we are a wizard, and it's just good to have that versatility. Since we're going fighter mage, I'm going to go heavy into the Gish spells. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade both, just right off the bat. We're going to use these off and on throughout our adventuring career, so might as well just have them. They're kind of our signatures, so yeah, let's just lean into the type. For ranged attacks, I'm going to pick up Firebolt. We could pick up Toll of the Dead or, maybe Chill Touch or Ray of Frost or something like that, but I don't know. I just like the feel of Firebolt. You shoot a bolt of fire, it does 1d10 damage. Yeah, it's fire. Fire is one of the most resisted damage types in the game. But in those situations where we run into something with fire resistance, we have lots of other options because we're an elf and we can pick up our bow and plink away with arrows or do a number of other things because we have other spells at our disposal, leveled spells, for example. And last of all, for the fourth cantrip, I'm going to go ahead and pick up Light. Light, in my opinion, is a great utility spell that can help your allies out a lot. Oftentimes we have a lot of humans in our party because humans are so awesome because they start out with that feat, variant human. Although variant humans are kind of growing a little bit more scarce now that we have the custom lineage potential for race, but I still see a lot of humans. And oftentimes there are also other races that just don't have dark vision, and it's just nice to be able to use that light spell. And in addition, there are monsters, a surprising number of monsters that have like an adverse reaction to light. So light's one of those things that provides this, you know, pretty decent benefit almost all the time, and sometimes a really surprisingly good benefit, particularly for a cantrip. Now, if you want to pick up something like Mage Hand, which is also fantastic, or perhaps Prestigitation because you like to clean your clothes or do cool wizard gestures or things like that, that's cool. Mending as well can also situationally be just extraordinarily awesome when this situation comes up. So I'm not dissing any of those, but just for me, I'm going to go ahead and pick up Light. You do you if you want something else. Now for our spell book. As a wizard, we get lots of spell choices, and I'm going to focus in a lot on spell selection with this build. We're going to be using our spells to define this build a lot. This is a big part of our optimization is figuring out what spells we're going to take and how we're going to use them. Oftentimes with optimization guides, I don't really see a lot about spell optimization except maybe just picking one spell and optimizing the heck out of that. Like, I don't know, I see lots of builds for spike growth, for example. And don't get me wrong, that's an amazing spell, but we are going to try to be more of a generalist than a specialist. We're going to try to take amazing individual things and use them for situations that call for them. We're going to try to think nimbly and stack things together in the situation rather than necessarily having specific hard build, singly defined um, method of going about things, right? And so this makes our build a little bit complicated, but it's kind of fun. So starting out at first level, we're going to take Shield, Magic Missile, Magnify Gravity if Explorer's Guide to Wildmont is available. If not, we're going to take Thunder Wave. I like Magnify Gravity because it's a control spell that can lock down your enemy's movement a little bit, which can be pretty clutch, particularly if you're getting hit by waves and waves of bads and you want to break their momentum as they come in, or if your ally is throwing down a zone that's really harmful and slowing down their movement in that zone is just really going to hurt them that much more. It's just got this nice added control effect that I would really want if it's available in my campaign. Thankfully, my game master allows it. If yours does too, it's a great first level spell. In addition, we're going to take Featherfall, Detect Magic, and Absorb Elements, all of which really have paid off for me in so many ways, particularly Detect Magic and Featherfall. When you need it, if you don't have it, you're like, oh my God, I wish I had Featherfall. So So this is our build out with spells starting out. Some of you might be wondering why, if we're starting out as a fighter mage type, I'm not taking mage armor. And generally speaking, I don't like to burn my spell, one of my 2 spell slots, possibly 3, in mage armor at first level. If I'm picking mage armor up, it's when I tend to have more spell slots later on. And it's something that I decide to do to give myself just a little bit more defense. I don't mind so much at first level hanging back as a wizard and lobbing fire bolts or, dropping magic missiles or magnify gravities and or thunder waves, and then running in to occasionally hit something with a green flame blade with my short sword or dagger, as long as there's maybe a foe next to them, and then after they get taken out either by me or someone else, then getting back again and not really meleeing so much at first level. But that's me. If you want to go ahead and pick up mage armor, you do you. So this is our basic classic fighter mage at first level. We've got access to some fighter type weapons. We don't yet have armor. We could have picked up mage armor, but I decided not to. We're pretty squishy at 8 HP, and we only have 13 armor class without shields, so we are not really super survivable. We want to be a stand back, lob stuff, hit and run kind of character at this level. But this changes a bit even as we level on to level 2 and we get into our wizard subclass, and we pick the wonderful subclass that is the Bladesinger Wizard. Now, this has Fighter Mage written all over it. It's kind of a pre-packaged Fighter Mage in the Wizard. It's like, here, you be a Fighter Mage, you can play a straight Wizard, you can do some fightery things, and you've got, the full Wizard progression tacked onto it. And that is awesome. I mean, you could play a straight Bladesinger Wizard and be quite happy. It is an amazing class just all by itself, and many people have written about it. I've played a straight Bladesinger Wizard through to, I think, 14th level, and it is fantastic. Now with this particular build, we're tweaking that a little bit to lean just a tad more toward the fighter. But even so, the Bladesinger by itself is awesome. So let's get into it. One of the things that we get at this level is training in War and Song, and immediately this helps us mitigate not getting mage armor and not having to use one of our precious spell slots on mage armor by getting this wonderful proficiency that we now have in light armor. And with our monies that we have accumulated now, we buy ourselves some leather armor. This bumps us to a 15 armor class, and it's amazing how much more survivable we are now, just even getting that extra 2 points in armor class. In addition, training in Wars and Song gives us another weapon proficiency. I'm going to go ahead and take Scimitar because I want to have access to all the all the dexterity-based melee weapons that I can. I'm really looking for them. If a magic one, like a magic scimitar or short sword or rapier drops, I want to be able to have access to that. So I picked scimitar. And last of all, we get performance out of this. Now, for my character, which is charisma as dump stat type, it's not really going to help her out that much. And even if I had a 10 in charisma, it's still not really going to help out that much. But it might make for some fun tavern scenes. So I don't know, something to consider as we continue to progress. But overall, aside from the wonderful things that we got from training in War and Song, kind of forgot what that was for a second. The reason why we came here was to get Blade Song, and oh man, is this amazing. So as a bonus action, when you activate this wonderful thing and you are holding on to your sword hums through the air with its own music, just tearing it apart with magic, providing you with this amazing additional magical defense by adding your intelligence modifier to your armor class. So for us, our armor class bumps to 18. And now we are up there with the sword and board types. When we activate our blade song, now remember we can only do this twice per day because it's equal to our proficiency bonus now. But when we do activate it for a whole minute, we get that bonus to our armor class. Now, in addition to that, we grow faster and we gain another 10 feet to our movement speed, which is also amazing, bumping us to a 40 movement speed. And in addition, we are now at advantage on our acrobatics checks. And I trained for acrobatics as one of my skills, anticipating this, and I recommend you do the same. It's really nice to be able to get out of those grapples, for example, or do some cool tricks like running down the banister or across the top of a door or over a tightrope. So yeah, that's really fun. But the other writer that is also fantastic when it comes to our blade song is we also now add our Constitution modifier to our saving throws for concentrating on a spell. So this bumps our Constitution saving throws up to +4 for concentrating on spells while we have blade song active. And that really helps us to keep hold of our spells that we are concentrating on. So one of the things that we really want to do when we are casting a spell that we concentrate on later on, maybe something like Haste, is to immediately use that bonus action to give us that buff to our concentration checks, because we don't want to lose that if we get hit. Now with Bladesinger coming on so strong, it's easy for us to forget about our spells, but we don't want to do that. And for spells at this level for our spell book, I'm going to take Find Familiar and identify 2 rituals, one of which will immediately pay off because we are going to summon ourselves a wonderful critter to help us out. I am particularly partial to the hawk, the owl, and the bat. And for Gaelya in Ted's game, I went ahead and I picked the bat. I wanted the blind sight because, well, there were just a lot of nasty enemies that kind of kept jumping on us, and I wanted to have that early warning mechanism, and the bat provides it. So if you're in a freaky campaign where, I don't know, it's like the aliens are after you and they're popping out of walls and they're coming out of the ground, and they're popping out of the ceiling, or there's a lot of invisible monsters or various hidden monsters. I do highly recommend the bat. The bat it will save your bacon. He is just a fantastic little critter to have. Now there are also other very fantastic critters, but I am going to go with the bat. Now for Identify, it's a bit pricey at this level, but I'm picking it up for later. Identify becomes very useful later, and I'm going to be spending my spell slots and spell book slots on other things as we go, and I don't want to forget Identify. Identify is very, very helpful. So that rounds us out for level 2. Moving on to level 3. Um, so I do see some folks are in chat. Odrin himself just said hello to me, and I just like to take this moment really quick to say hey back. But I want to let you know that I'm just kind of gonna go through this build, and if you guys have questions about the build guide, please feel free to add them into chat on Twitch, and I'll answer them at the end. But I'm also recording this for YouTube and Facebook. So I'm gonna run through the build guide and then hopefully get a chance to chat with you fine folks in just a little while. So thank you for stopping by. But moving on to level 3, we are going to take some really nice spells that will help us flesh out our Gish. But as we do this, I do want to remind you that we are not a tank. We might be able to kind of tank in certain situations, particularly if we are lucky and the Dungeon Master doesn't roll a critical hit, but we don't want to stay in the kitchen for a long time. We have that high armor class and we have the shield spell. So if our buds are in trouble and we want to kind of hold the passage for a round while the enemies come at us, then yeah, we could probably do that. We can activate Blade Song, and with Shield, we'll have like a 22 armor class. But our hit points now are just 20, so we are not really able to take the heat for very long. And if we take a critical hit, we are going to go down fast. We're also vulnerable to. Yeah, my microphone has this thing; it just likes to cut out on me. So we are also vulnerable to crits in that, like, critical hits can ruin our concentration, particularly at higher levels. So we don't really want to take the heat. We are super crit vulnerable, but we can pop in and out and take some of the heat to help our buds now and then. So if we were able to take Magnified Gravity from Wildmont at level 1, our blasting is still pretty well online. Magnified Gravity scales to level 2 and basically is as good or better than some of the other options that we would tend to pick at level 2. But if it was not available, I'm going to go ahead and recommend we pick up Shatter, because Shatter is a very good blast spell for the level 2 list, and it's of a damage type that is not commonly resisted. And we want to be laying down the blasts. Now, in addition, if we do have Magnified Gravity, I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and take False Life. We do want those extra hit points if we have access to them. And yeah, it's just a good thing to have, particularly since we are moving in and out of melee. Now, the main spell, though, that we are here for at level 3, because we are a Gish, we are a Fighter Mage, and we want to be very Fighter Magey, is Shadow Blade. And Shadow Blade is just amazing. We spend a bonus action, we utter the arcane words. I imagined it as like something like Lunin Sphert Umbra, and we conjure this blade of darkness into our hands that we can then use to slice through our foes psychically to the tune of 2d8 damage plus our ability mod, which right now is +3. Now, because it's a light weapon, we can also offhand another light weapon, such as a short sword or a scimitar, and add another die 6 damage, so giving us 2d8 plus 1 die 6 +3. And that's pretty solid for this level. It's not amazing DPR, but it is good DPR. And when we add in the other rider effect for Shadow Blade, which gives us advantage on attack rolls against a creature in dim light or darkness, then our damage over time also bumps up because our accuracy has bumped up as well. I really love Shadow Blade for Gish. It is a fun option, and but it is not the only option as we level, as we shall see, because Wizards of the Coast has granted us so many nice Gishy spells. But we do add this to our arsenal at level 3. Now, moving on to level 4, we get something that makes our Shadow Blade even better in the form of an ASI or the ability score increase or feat. And we choose the half feat that is Elven accuracy at level 4. And that immediately bumps our dexterity to 18, adding to our armor class and our to hit and our to damage with light or finesse weapons. But Elven Accuracy, while we are wielding Shadow Blade, also gives us what some people are calling triple advantage. And triple advantage is just really nice, especially when we are doing 2 to 8 damage with our weapon, and we have just increased our critical hit potential by that much more. So now our Shadow Blade go-to as Gish has just become that much more potent. It's also worth keeping in mind that we can hurl our Shadow Blade for a short to medium range distance as well, reforming it as a bonus action into our hands, making it the better option than a cantrip or most ranged attacks that we will be doing at this level. And our damage also bumps up a little bit because we increase dexterity. So overall, we're looking pretty nice at this level. Now for spells, I'm going to go ahead and pick Mirror Image because I want to, like, if there is a monster that is throwing down the heavy hits, or if there's a big mob, um, I want to have as many layers of defense up as possible if the stuff is really coming in at me hard. I am squishy at my core, but I am going to use as a fighter mage magic to be my like bulwark and strength, right? In addition, for my other spell in my spell book, I'm going to go ahead and pick Misty Step because mobility is amazing, especially if we are grappled by some gigantic creature, possibly in the jaws of it. It is just a wonderful thing to spend that bonus action and be able to teleport out of a creature's jaws or some other kind of trouble or possibly get somewhere we need to go really fast or flee a situation rapidly if we need to. So that added mobility is clutch in my opinion, particularly for fighter mage because being in a place or out of a place becomes a lot more critical when we're dancing on that fine line playing a skirmisher where we're juking into combat and juking out. So Misty Step is, in my opinion, pretty necessary for this build. Now, moving on to fifth level. Fifth level is just so nice for wizards. Wouldn't you agree with me? We get so many wonderful options in our spell list. In fact, there's just too many to choose from. It's just all the goodies, right there at third level. Now, for this build, I am going to go ahead and pick Fireball first. Fireball is just so amazing. Excuse me for a sec. Sorry, little bit of hold on. I guess I had a little bit of fireball activity going on, right? So fireball is just so amazing. That 8 die 6 damage, the range, the fact that you don't necessarily even have to see the target, you can just lob it out into an area that you previously saw before and create this massive burst of flame that ripples over your enemies for a rather large chunk of damage. It's a clutch spell. There are situations where it's not that great. Say, for example, if your campaign is in the Nine Hells and you are dealing with a lot of fire immune devils, for example, or even fire resistant critters will knock down the effectiveness of Fireball. But for most dungeon settings at this level, this spell is just amazing. And I would just be so wrong as a wizard, as a Gish, as a fighter mage of Dungeons and Dragons old school fame to not take Fireball. So this is the first one that I am going to take, and it has already paid off for me oh so well in a large Icewind Dale encounter that I will be posting on YouTube for you guys if you guys want to watch it. That we have already played, already streamed on Twitch. So if you missed it, I'm going to go ahead and put up the campaign archive and post it for you. But yeah, it helped save our party's bacon big time. There were a lot of players that saved our bacon, but this was kind of part of it, which yeah, it made me so glad that I took that spell. Now, in addition, we are also going to take Haste, and Haste is one of the gishiest of the Gish spells, but for our Bladesinger, it just gives us so much. Not only does it give us +2 to our armor class, which is really helpful, it's going to help us again shrug off those hits, be a really hard target. It gives us a potential additional attack. It doubles our base movement speed. So if we have Blade Song active, our movement speed goes from 40 to 80. And I don't really know of a character class at this level that is capable of doing 80 feet of movement. And if we use our hasted action to dash instead of attack again, we can go 160 feet. So yeah, we can cover a crazy lot of ground with this thing with haste active. In addition, it gives us advantage on our dexterity saving throws. So if we happen to get into an AoE effect ourselves, much of the time we'll get advantage on those critical saves, which will help us mitigate the damage, which will help us continue concentrating on haste. And I think that's all the benefits of haste. So I don't know if I'm missing something. Go ahead and throw it into the comments, but I think I've got it. So haste is a fantastic Gish spell. It does compete with Shadow Blade, so we'll have to pick and choose, but it's definitely something that we want to have in our arsenal. So yeah, level 5 key level for us as a fighter mage. But another key level is coming at level 6 for a lot of different reasons. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. At level 6, we are a Bladesinger. We gain this wonderful ability that is only available to our typical frontline fighter types. And I just want to say we're not really a frontline fighter. We're a skirmisher, but to get this extra attack is just so nice, right? We enter the ranks of paladins and barbarians and fighters and warlocks who take their pack to the blade and get, I think it's thirsting blade. Off the top of my head, I think it's thirsting blade. Maybe some sword bards, rangers, and I think that's it. Then there's us, right? Blade singers. We get it too. Now, we don't have all the chops of those hardcore frontline classes, but getting second attack is really beneficial to us. And then in addition to that, we get this wonderful magical writer that we can cast a spell as part of our attack action, substituting one of our actions for that spell. And this gives us so many options. I mean, we can shoot arrows and lob a cantrip, for example, or and this has to be a cantrip, but um, we can do things like cast True Strike if we really want advantage, and then attack with our weapon after that. Or we can do some kind of utility thing like, I don't know, cast light and mess with our opponents that are vulnerable to light and then attack them. So this just gives us such a versatility of options. But one of the things it also does is gives us the ability to cast Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade as part of our attack action, which increases our damage. It also provides us with potential additional rider effects that do even more damage. So we kind of get a double whammy at this level. We get 2 attacks and we get to use our Gishy spells to add to our damage on top of it. And that is an amazing rider that no one else gets. So we're immediately melding sword and magic, and this feels so fighter magey. It's just so nice. Now, according to rules as written, however, we cannot use this in conjunction with Shadow Blade, which is a bit of a bummer, but that's okay. There are we still have haste, and there is another spell that we're going to talk about in just a minute that will help us out with this as well when we are wielding a weapon that is not made as formed from shadow, as Shadow Blade is. So yes, so amazing basic Bladesinger core ability, but let's also move on to spells here. Now for spells, we're going to go ahead and pick Counter Spell, which is just amazing to have. If we want to shut down some enemy magic, we really want to have Counter Spell. And the second spell that we're going to take is Spirit Shroud. Now, Spirit Shroud adds to our quiver of concentration-based Gish spells, and this spell is one that scales over time, and that as we level is going to become more and more appealing for us. Now, even at this level, it is very nice. If we cast Spirit Shroud as a bonus action, we add an extra die 8 damage to each of our attacks that land. If we use our special Sword Mage ability to cast, say, for example, Green Flame Blade as part of one of our attacks, we're adding another die 8 fire damage for a total of 3 die 8. And then if we're attacking with a rapier, we're making 2 more 1 die 8 attacks for a total of 5 die 8 if all hits land. So this stacks up pretty quick. We're still probably doing more damage if we summon Shadow Blade, particularly at level 3. So exchanging that level 3 slot, we're going to be doing 6 die 8 damage versus 5 die 8. But Spirit Shroud already comes out of the gate with some pretty amazing options. And if we're not getting advantage due to conditions, the other rider for Spirit Shroud, which slows down enemies that are moving within that 10-foot radius of us, becomes really helpful, especially for maybe keeping an enemy off our back at a given time. Or possibly we're using Spirit Shroud to use an energy source that might be harmful or more harmful to one of our enemies, such as radiant damage. So it is a really worthwhile thing to have in our quiver, and we can activate it as a bonus action. And this one will be the gift that keeps giving as we level. So for just a quick rundown, we have now 3 Gish spells in our quiver, and we're going to have to be really smart when we choose to use them. Now, moving on to level 7, we have established ourselves as a wizard. We have established ourselves rather well as a sword and sorcery type melee weapon user. But we're going to double down on this just a little bit more at this level. We're going to start to add a little bit more fighter mage flavor to our classic Gish. And it is here now, after we've gotten all these wonderful things from Wizard and Bladesinger, that we are going to take our first level of fighter. Now, the first level of fighter gives us a little bit more in the way of hit points. We don't have great hit points at this point. We got about 46, which is okay. I mean, it's mid-range. It's less than a cleric probably, unless the cleric has dumped Constitution for some odd reason. So we're still kind of mid-range hit points here. We are relying very heavily on our spells and our blade song and our armor class to keep us alive in melee. And we are also relying on the fact that we are not going to stick around in melee too long or get ourselves right in the middle, right in the thick of things like that big tanky fighter would. So just keep that in mind. This level fighter is not going to give us too much more in the way of beefy tankiness. But it does give us some nice things. We get an extra 2 hit points that we would not have gotten otherwise. We get Second Wind, which is a nice little bonus action healing that we can recharge on a short or a long rest. And we get Fighting Style, which we use to pick Dueling. Now, Dueling will give us +2 on damage for each of our strikes, and this will give us another mild bump to our DPR, which is starting to look pretty healthy. We're coming in line with a lot of the standard, moderately optimized fighters and paladins and rangers, when it comes to DPR, consistent damage, and we have some nice added accuracy riders if we've picked up Shadow Blade. We're doing about 39 DPR, which is pretty solid if we land both of our hits and we're casting Shadow Blade at level 3. So this dueling does help us out a little bit. It gives us a bit of a dump. Now, I'm sorry, a bit of a bump. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm not taking 2-weapon fighting, because the Bladesinger really does benefit a lot from 2-weapon fighting. But I want to get away from the necessity to pick up Warcaster to not drop our offhand weapon when I want to cast Shield. And picking dueling focuses us in more on a single weapon, and it also opens up our bonus action for other things. We have lots of bonus action potentials now at this time, what with Blade Song and picking up our Shadow Blade and possibly using Second Wind. But even as we level, we're going to get even more. And some of these bonus actions are going to provide us with extra attacks through the kinds of spells that we select. So I will leave that option open because it just seems to work out better overall in the long run. And since I'm shoring up our single strike ability with dueling, we're not losing too much on damage by not picking 2-weapon fighting. Now, if you want to go ahead and do two-weapon fighting, please feel free, and you do you. but I'm going to go ahead and pick Dueling, and we are going to move on to level 8. And for level 8, we get back to Wizard because Wizard is still our main class, and we still want to iteratively bump our spellcasting ability. And I'm not really too worried about waiting till ninth level to get this next thing that I really want, but I'm actually level 9 just seems like a level when something really good should happen, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy to think of it that way, but that's where I am. What I really want though from level 4 is I want another wonderful spell that is provided by Wildmont. If Wildmont is not available in your game, then you might be picking Vitriolic Sphere, which is fantastic too. But what I want is Gravity Sinkhole. And this is another awesome Nova. It is about the same average damage as a fireball, but this is force damage. And it also pulls all the enemies that don't save toward the center of the spell, grouping them up again for another potential effect. And I'm picking this up thinking ahead for things that I might want to do. But also, it's really good for party enabling, particularly if you have another blaster type in your party, such as, I don't know, a Tempest cleric that might want to throw down some serious heat. So you drop Gravity Sinkhole, gather all your enemies together, and your Tempest cleric drops something like, I don't know, maximized shatter using their channel divinity, which would just be some amazing party optimization, don't you think? And I don't know, like there, some of the people I play with, they're like, well, I mean, you're kind of playing a blaster, so I'm not going to play a blaster. I'm going to pick something else. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I kind of feel like the more the merrier. Just have fun. We can, if you're going to blast, maybe we can have some fun blasting together. We can have a blast blasting together. So my number one choice is for this spell choice is Gravity Sinkhole for our spell book. For the reasons I just described, the wonderful control options that we get. Now for the second spell, I'm doubling down on Gish spells, tripling down on Gish spells. I want to do as many Gishy things as we can. And one of the fun Gish spells in the game is Fire Shield. So I'm going to pick up that. That gives us some nice resistance to either fire or cold damage and some nice reactive damage in the form of 2d8 fire or cold damage if we get hit by an attack. And we also glow, so we cast a little light for our friends if we so choose to cast the spell. The other thing is it's not concentration and it lasts for 10 minutes. So it's one of those things that we can cast when we know in advance that things are going to get rough. Particularly helpful if there are a lot of bads with low hit points. So, when they hit us, then they're hurting even more, right? So those are my choices for 8th level. I think we've had enough for 8th level. So moving on to 9th level, we do get that wonderful, wonderful second fighter level. And you know it, I know it. The reason why we are here is Action Surge. And oh boy, does this just make us such a nice fighter mage at this point. We have sacrificed a couple of spell levels and a couple of really nice spells that we would otherwise get at the ninth level wizard. But what we've gained from it is this really punchy Gish action economy. And what does it remind me of? I mean, I remember way back when I was a kid and we were playing advanced Dungeons and Dragons and you would cast haste and haste would actually just double your attack. So it would just turn you into this action economy machine, or it gave you the ability to like cast a spell and then go off and do some attacks. So it just really exploded you. Now, don't get me wrong, haste is still awesome, but what it was in the Wayback Machine was amazing. It also aged you a number of years, so if you were anything other than an elf and cast it, then yeah, you were edging yourself onto oblivion unless you had a bunch of potions of longevity. But I want to harken back, right, to the action economy of the original Fighter Mage. And we are going to get it both through our ability to cast haste, but also through our ability to do the fighter thing that is Action Surge at level 2. Now, not only can we Nova in a melee sense, we can Nova in a spell sense. So remember that little spell that we picked up last level if we had access to Wildmont, Gravity Sinkhole? Our spell Nova round now includes us casting Gravity Sinkhole and doing 5 die 10 damage on creatures within the 20-foot radius of Gravity Sinkhole, and then sucking those critters in toward the center, and then doubling up and casting our Fireball. Now, depending on where we position Gravity Sinkhole in relationship to Fireball, despite the fact that they're both the same radius, we might actually suck more critters in and be able to hit the second group with the Fireball as well, thus increasing our damage potential across all the various critters, right? So this is just really nice. And when we Action Surge and cast Gravity Sinkhole and Fireball, we are also doing 5 die 10 plus 8 die 6 damage, which is an average of 55 if the critters don't save. About 28 if they do save on both spells. So very severe damage in the event that we do unload this baddie. Now we also have the option to focus fire in melee, and if we focus fire with our Shadow Blade, for example, we're also going to do some pretty substantial damage in the form of 15 die 8 plus 24, particularly if we crit. So if we crit, we're going to be doing 15 die 8 plus 24 for a total of 91.5 damage on a Nova with Shadow Blade, which is pretty substantial. I mean, nothing to shake a stick at. We're not hitting the top ranks of Nova critical builds, but we're not lagging too far behind, and we've got the wonderful thing that is our blasting capability and our spell casting capability added onto this beastly critter that we have constructed. So yes, so level 9 we get level 2 fighter, and oh boy, are we very fighter magey. Now moving on to level 10 to 13, we are going to go back to our wizard, and we are going to pick up a number of very wonderful benefits. So at level 10, we're going to be a level 8 wizard. We're going to use our ASI to bump intelligence to 18. This helps to bump our AC as a result of the benefit we get from Bladesong. And now at level 10, we are using Bladesong 4 times because our proficiency bonus is now +4 times per day. So this is becoming a much more common trick for us now, and one of the reasons why intelligence becomes a lot more important for us as we get up into the mid and high levels. We're also adding +6 to our concentration checks while Bladesong is active now that we've bumped up our intelligence. And in addition, we're going to pick up 2 more nice spells, Autoluke's Resilient Sphere and Fly from the 3rd level list. Autoluke's, I think, is a great spell, particularly for saving yourself from trouble or saving your buddies from trouble. If you get one buddy that is really drawing the aggro and you throw Autolukes on top of them, then well, they basically have an impenetrable barrier of force that the enemies can't get through, and your enemies have to go elsewhere. Fly is just something I feel like as a wizard we need to have. If we want to have the extra mobility from Fly, we really want it, and I don't want to be in a situation where I don't have Fly, so I'm adding it to my spellbook at the very least. Moving on to level 11, we reach level 9 in Wizard, and that gives us 5th level spells. And oh boy, does our potential, again, for some nice gishiness, jump up a notch. And in order to do that, we jump all over the wonderful spell that is Steel Wind Strike. Now, Steel Wind Strike really has Gish written all over it. And when we cast this wonderful spell, We flourish our sword or our dagger, and then we vanish. And while we are vanished, we get to choose 5 targets within 30 feet, and we get to make a melee spell attack against each of them. If we hit, we deal 6 die 10 force damage, and if we score a critical hit, this damage doubles. Now, this gives us another level of fun. Sorry about that. My mic just cut out again, and I'm going to take another sip from my coffee here because I'm getting a little dry. Okay, so this adds another level to our Gishy fun when we do our AoE Nova. Now, when we cast Gravity Sinkhole, we suck as many critters as we can into a 10-foot radius, right? Because why? Because before we did that, we cast the also wonderful spell that is, say it with me now, Spirit Shroud. And why did we do this? Well, we'll get into that in a second. So using our 4th level slot, we cast Gravity Sinkhole. Using our 3rd level slot, we have already cast Spirit Shroud on a previous round with a bonus action. And on our Nova round, after casting Gravity Sinkhole and sucking all those critters to within a 10-foot radius of us, we cast, you guessed it, Steel Wind Strike using our action surge. Now, what does that do for us? Not only have we just done 5 die 10 damage with our Gravity Sinkhole, not only if we hit with Steel Wind Strike are we doing an additional 6 die 10, but because we are making a melee attack against a creature within 10 feet of us, and we are using our nice, wonderful mobility to walk to within 10 feet, or run, as the case may be, right before we cast Steel Wind Strike, we are adding the 1 die 8 damage from Spirit Shroud on top of it. Now this is really fun, right? Because we are now doing a average of 65 damage on each target that we catch in this wonderful combine of force that we have now created. If we happen to score a critical hit on one of these targets, we do a brutal 98 total damage so long as they failed their save against the Gravity Sinkhole. So this is not only amazing AoE damage, it's potentially amazing focus fire damage if we land a critical hit. But our focus fire also just bumped up a notch because we also, if we neglected to buy it or purchase it before, picked up the wonderful focus fire spell, which is Scorching Ray. And instead of, if we're deciding to focus fire, instead of casting Spirit Shroud at level 3, we cast it at level 5. We walk to within 10 feet of our target that we wish to focus fire on. Then we cast 1 Scorching Ray at level 4, giving us 6 Scorching Rays, right? Is that right? Is it 5 or 6? I'm sorry, 5 Scorching Rays, giving us 5 Scorching Rays. And then we action surge again and cast another level 4 Scorching Ray, giving us 5 more for a total of 10. If we hit with all of them, what do? We do 20 die 6 damage, right? But don't forget, now we have the rider for, you guessed it, Spirit Shroud that does another 2 die 8 damage. So we do 20 die 6 if we hit every time, and 20 die 8. So if we land all these hits, the total damage is 160. And if we crit with one of them, it's 176. And now we have just propelled ourselves into the ranks of upper tier Nova Strikers at level 11. There aren't many critters or characters that can do 176 damage as part of a Nova at level 11. So whoa, we just leveraged our spells to create some serious effect here. Now we also still have our melee capability, which is by no means slacking, but these spells at this level are really singing. At level 12, we go to level 10 in Wizard and we pick up Dimension Door because we love the mobility. And we pick up Animate Objects because Animate Objects is just so amazing. And we don't want to neglect it as part of our quiver of options. There are so many options now. We want to have all the good options. And if we want to throw a lot of critters that float around and detect invisibility onto the battlefield and help mitigate damage to us because they're forming this kind of swarm around us and they're drawing aggro from bads, then yes, we definitely want to have animate objects active. And animate objects can be one of the highest damage producing effects in the game, even at this level, even at level 12, given your situation. If you're running against creatures that have damage reduction against weapons that are non-magical, then your mileage comes down quite a bit with this thing. But if you're dealing with mobs of critters, yeah, animate objects is just really nice. So we pick it up. In addition, we also get the very nice Bladesinger trick that is Song of Defense. And Song of Defense adds to our quiver of reaction abilities. I haven't really gone into this too much. We have Shield, which is an amazing armor class buff. We have Absorb Elements, which is an amazing defensive throw, I would call it, against elemental damage. Say we get hit with Dragon Breath or something like that, and we want to mitigate elemental damage. Absorb Elements is amazing. Song of Defense adds to that quiver because now we can exchange one of our spells and burn, say, for example, 1 to 5 spell level slots to absorb anywhere from 5 to 25 damage. If we're taking a critical hit from a weapon, for example, this becomes a really good option to help save our bacon and help us continue concentrating on that one spell that we really want to keep concentrating on. So Song of Defense adds into our layer of defense and our layer of options. Now we have our reaction is starting to get pretty crowded, but this reaction is something that we want to have as part of our suite. Our sweet, yes. Okay, so at level 13, we now access 6th level spells and we are picking up Tensor's Transformation to add to our Gishy Quiver, and the wonderful spell that is Gravity Fissure from Wildmont again. um, if we don't pick up Gravity Fissure because we don't have Wildmont, we might want to pick up Chain Lightning instead because Chain Lightning is also an awesome blast spell. But I really like Gravity Fissure. It's like a gravity lightning bolt that pulls people into the lightning bolt and does more damage than the lightning bolt. So yeah, I really love Gravity Fissure. Um, we'll talk a little bit more about Tensor's transformation later, but it gives us a lot of options. It for one, it gives us proficiency in Constitution saving throws. And it also gives us 50 temporary hit points. And in addition to that, it gives us advantage on all of our weapon attacks, which combined with Elven accuracy is now going to be triple advantage. So it's going to increase our crit potential. In particular, if you want to use like a range weapon like a bow and move in and out of combat in that way, Tensors provides us with great options. Although it does nuke our spellcasting potential. So it might be something that we decide to throw when we're about to be out of spells, or if we know that we're going to be slogging through a long combat where we're not going to really need spells that much to support ourselves or our allies. Tensor's Transformation is also a potentially good option. There is a major detractor that if we fail a saving throw at the end of the spell, we end up getting some levels of exhaustion, and exhaustion really bites. So choose your moment wisely for Tensor's transformation. I'm going to talk about this a little more later. But also because we have gotten the 6th level spell slot, um, we are our novas with Steel Wind Strike and Action Surge and Spirit Shroud and uh, um, I think we're still using Gravity Sinkhole, but even if we aren't, our novas have just gotten a lot stronger. We're doing an average. Oh yes, so now we're casting. I'm sorry, I'm just reading my notes. We are now casting Steel Wind Strike twice for our nova using Action Surge and Spirit Shroud to do a total of 12 die 10 plus 4 die 8 to all the critters within 10 feet of us, or an average of 84 damage per target if we hit. And if we crit, we're doing 135 damage against a single target. Again, this is just devastatingly brutal for level 13. And this is against all the creatures next to us. I kind of think of it as, we disappear and do something like we do something really anime, like we draw our sword through the air and we step into the fabric of space and time between our regular existence, and then our spectral sword strikes just ring out, just whoosh, 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 whoosh against 5 foes. And yeah, it's almost like a samurai Gish elf move. and, and we were doing like, I mean, it's not Meteor Swarm level damage, but I don't know where you're going to get this kind of damage elsewhere in a kind of AoE Nova. I mean, unless you're building a similar AoE Nova build that is relying on 2 levels of fighter. So, and the mojo involved with this is just it's so fey. I mean, please do this. Please do this in one of your games and record it and send it back to me because I want to see this done by someone other than me. This is just too good not to do, right? Please do it. Do it for yourself. Do it for your friends. Do it for me. Okay. And also moving on to our focus fire nova using Scorching Ray. And now we do 26 die 6 plus 26 die 8 for 208 average damage if all the attacks land, and 224 if one of these happens to be a crit. It's just all the gishiness with all the spells and all of the action surges. Yes. Okay. And I mean, we do need to probably look at our consistent DPR just with level 5 Spirit Shroud active and no other major buffs. We are doing 8 die 8 plus 12 for 48 average damage, plus 13 if Booming Blade or the Green Flame Blade Rider triggers. And this is not with magic item support. We're probably getting into the low 50s with your average magic item support. And this is pretty good. We're burning a 5th level spell slot to do it, but we've got them. We've got 2, right? So in the major combat, we can do pretty good consistent DPR as well. So yeah, we're looking really gishy. And these are just some examples. All the stuff I've given you can be combined in so many different ways. And I don't know, write to me, send me a tweet. I don't know. Tell me all the fun ways that you have optimizing and learning how to use all the wonderful spells from this Gish and the other wonderful fighter abilities and elfish kind of fey abilities that we've stacked into it. Now, moving on to level 14 through 16, we again at level 14 we are level 12 wizard and we get another ASI and we are bumping dexterity to 20. Along down the line, this gives us a lot of benefits. Our armor class goes up. We have more damage now. We're base +7 with our rapier without magic items to support us. We are +12 to hit without magic items to support us now, unmodified, and that includes with our Shadow Blade, which we can get some nice triple advantage with. Our initiative mod goes up to 5, and we really like that because we want to get the jump on the bads during combat to drop our AoEs on them and make them go boom and, have their bodies disintegrate into ash and have their eyeballs fall down onto the floor in a very cartoon fashion because I don't know. Maybe our game master does cool cartoon things like that or not. But in addition to our ASI, we're going to pick 2 nice additional 6th level spells. And I'm thinking Chain Lightning if we already got the Gravity Fissure from Wildmont and Wall of Force. So that rounds us out for 14. Moving on to 15, we now have access to 7th level spells. And oh, for me, 7th level spells are so juicy for wizards. I love so many spells on the 7th level list. It's really hard to pick. But for our Gish, what do I really want? I want, first off, I want Crown of Stars, which adds to our Focus Fire Nova in the form of an ability to use a bonus action to pull a little star from its orbit around our head and hurl it at our foes and to do 4d12 damage. And if we have Spirit Shroud active, we can now do 4d12 plus 2d8 if we've upcast Spirit Shroud to level 5 as a bonus action. This is just so juicy. So yeah, so now our Focus Fire spell single target Nova has just gotten a big bump. And then in addition, we choose another spell, which makes it hard for us to choose Crown of Stars for our slots because we only have one slot right at this level. We choose Reverse Gravity. And I don't know about you. I don't know how many of you have just walked into a room and cast this massive area, this huge column of like reverse gravity that sucks all the critters up to the ceiling, or to slam into the stalactites and stalagmites and hover up there. It's basically splitting your foes, the ones that have made their save are like clinging to various objects on the ground. Easy now for your friends to pick off with ranged attacks and spells, dividing your enemies and locking them down, making it really hard for them to move because the gravity is reversed. And if they lose hold of the objects that they're clinging to, they're going to fall up again as well. And when you end the effect, they fall down. So, I mean, in certain situations, particularly if there's a nice high ceiling, reverse gravity can easily be an encounter ender. So I don't know. I have trouble between choosing between this wonderful area control that is reverse gravity and the wonderful focus fire enabler that is Crown of Stars. I think what I'll do is, I'll have they'll both be in my options to cast, in my memorized options. And as the situation warrants, I'll cast either Crown of Stars or Reverse Gravity. And there will probably be a time when I will have cast one and then been like, oh, darn, I want to cast Crown of Stars too. But it's better to have that situation happen to you than the opposite and be like, I don't know what to do because everything sucks. We're in the situation now where everything is awesome and we don't know what to do because there are so many awesome things to do. But we do decide to pick to do the things. We don't just sit on all the awesomeness and not do them. Our companions will hate us if we don't use our wonderful spells. So use them, be glorious, and if you run out, that's okay because you used them, right? And you had fun. And if you die because you used them all, then you can at least die knowing that you had fun on the way to death, right? Okay, so enough about the lovely spells that we choose at level 15. Oh, just gonna say though that with the focus fire from Crown of Stars that we get for our Focus Fire Nova with Scorching Ray and the Spirit Shroud Rider, we now do 259 damage on the crit. So, yep, average. If we hit every time, of course. But even so, yeah, it is nuts, guys. It is totally nuts. All right, so moving on now to level 16. we gain Song of Victory. And now when we draw our blade and activate our arcane elven blade song, we conjure this magical force that surrounds our blade, lightsaber-like, that does an additional amount of damage equal to our intelligence modifier at this level, which is 4. And this ups our damage without magical weapons, our damage mod, to plus 11. And this is pretty significant. I mean, we are not really plinking anymore. Our single strikes, even with a regular weapon, kind of sting a little bit, particularly when we activate Blade Song. So for example, now with Spirit Shroud and Song of Victory active, just Spirit Shroud at level 5 and Song of Victory active, we are now doing 8/8 damage when we also include our cantrip. And we are adding 22 damage on top of that for 58 average DPR, which is a pretty solid DPR. And our rider is adding an approximate 13 damage from Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade for a total of 71 total effect, not against a single target, but still. If we have cast Crown of Stars and we manage to effectively hurl one of our stars, we do an additional 4 die 12 plus 2 die 8 for a total of 93 minus the rider, or 106 after the rider. Now that is pretty badass. Now we need to keep in mind that Crown of Stars is a ranged attack. So if there is someone in melee threatening us, we're going to be at disadvantage. But if we are smart and we hurl the star beforehand and then run into combat, and either we take the target out or our allies help us take the target out, then we are free again to repeat the process. So we still need to think of ourselves as a skirmisher. We do not want to be running in and being surrounded by enemies. We are swooping in and using our combination of sword and spell to lay waste to our enemies, and we are allowing our allies to be our bulwark and strength, and we are praying that we have some nice tanky types to really help us out, right? Because that would be the teamwork that makes the dream work, right? Okay, I know that's really super cheesy. I guess I can hear the wah wah in the background. Also, if we crit with this combination, particularly with the Crown of Stars effect, we are bumping up into the 100s range. The Crown of Star, if we crit with that, we're going to get to 128, and that's without action surging or Nova or anything like that. So we're a threat. We are a serious threat, especially when we expend some spells to make us so, which is what being a Gish is all about, right? Now for level 16 spells, we're going to do some backfilling. We're a 14th level wizard, and we're going to pick up Contingency, which is level 6, which can save our bacon if we have a contingent effect set up. For example, I like to set up on Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, say trigger if an attack or effect would cause us to go to 0 hit points. Autoluke's Resilient Sphere triggers, and boom, we just mitigated all that damage and we are in a protective bubble. And if we know that we are going to go into like a seriously dangerous type situation, we might want to set up that contingent chain of effects. It does take up our 6th level slot though, and the slot of the contingent spell. So this can be a real spell hog. We maybe just want to use it when we feel really vulnerable, but it's a good combination to have. Now, the other spell that I'm going to recommend is something that is potentially game breaking. So I'm just going to talk about it and say it's something that we want in our back pocket for a raining day. And that spell is Simulacrum. Now, Simulacrum essentially creates a duplicate of us as we are now. They cannot learn or grow, and they have half the number of hit points that we have. And they're really much more squishy than even we are. And another element to its squishiness is if someone succeeds in a Dispel Magic casting against it, either upcasting it to 7th level or succeeding in the spell check to overcome the DC for 7th level spell, then poof, Simulacrum is gone, but is essentially like having another you and a huge bag of spells and potential devastating attacks. And this can be game breaking in a number of ways. Consult your game master before you come in hard and heavy with a simulacrum. For me, I kind of like keeping it as a backstop for if the shit really hits the fan. I use maybe a contingent spell to teleport in my simulacrum after I say a certain word like pineapple. And then the simulacrum comes in and helps us as a party get out of that really bad situation. And then when all is said and done, the simulacrum fades off back into the sunset, and we are just ourselves now for the rest of the game. Um, if that's all right with your game master, go for it. But I wouldn't push Simulacrum too hard, even though it is absolutely an amazing spell, which potentially doubles all the things that I was just explaining earlier. So yeah, something with the same action economy that we have and the ability to cast the same spells. It's just potentially devastating, which is why even though this is an optimization guide, I I I really just pray talk to your game master before doing this thing, and maybe sometimes it's just better not to use simulacrum. Maybe sometimes it's just better to be yourself and not be two of yourself. All right. So moving on to level 17. We are now a 15th level wizard, and because we have been picking wonderful Wildmont spells this whole time, we decide to take Dark Star, and this brutal spell is a 40-foot radius area of dark, deafening, silencing, crushing magical force. So it, in many ways, will lock down enemy spellcasters because they can't see and they can't hear, and their verbal components for their spells are done. And not only that, it slows them down. So when they're stuck in this crushing field of 40-foot radius darkness, they're having to take double their movement to get out. So if they're toward the center, it's possibly going to take them 2 rounds to get out. And for every round that they end their turn on in this crushing force, they take 8d10 damage. And if you or your allies have the means to continue to push them into this field of force, they will continue to be debilitated in this way. So yeah, I really like Dark Star. If we don't have access to this, we can take something pretty awesome, pretty equally awesome, like Incendiary Cloud. But if Dark Star is available, I'm going to highly recommend it. Now, for our second spell, um, I am going to recommend Sunburst. It's just so amazing to throw that large AoE down and potentially blind a huge number of creatures while also doing a massive amount of radiant damage. So yeah, so that rounds us out for level 17 and 15th level wizard. At level 18, we get to 16th level wizard and our last ability score increase, and we drop it into intelligence so that now we are maxed out both in intelligence and dexterity at 20. We now have a 22 base AC with Blade Song active and no magic item support for armor class. The shield spell pushes us to 27. Haste, if we decide to cast it, gets us all the way to 29. Even so, these are really high armor classes, but even so, we've only increased our armor class by a net of about 3 since level 5 or level 6. So we are getting hit a little bit more often. We might consider taking mage armor now or even prior to get that extra point of armor class if we don't have some magical studded leather armor. But even so, we are still one of the highest armor class characters in the game at this point. So now that we have maxed out our intelligence, our damage also goes up. when we Blade Song, due to our Song of Victory, we are now adding 5 to our concentration on spells, which is almost as good as if we were proficient in Constitution saves. So yeah, so we've now just really maxed out the goodies that the Blade Song is going to provide us at level 18. This is our last level before ninth level spells. So I want to give you guys some examples of what we can do Nova-ing not having ninth level spells. And if we really push it, we can activate Spirit Shroud at level 7 for an additional 3 die 8 damage on each attack against a target. We're doing, with Blade Song active, we're doing one. With Blade Song active, we are doing 1 die 8 plus 12 with our rapier. So with the Spirit Shroud, that's 4 die 8 plus 12 for each strike. We are level 18, so we are now doing an extra 3 die 8 with our cantrips. And when we action surge, because of the statement on Bladesinger that says with each action you can use a cantrip instead of an attack, we can use our cantrip twice. So when we action surge, we actually add 6 die 8. If we have Crown of Stars active, we add that to our devastating suite of effects. So what does this look like when we Nova with these? We're having to spend an 8th level slot to activate Crown of Stars, just to be clear here. But if we do waste our resources, I don't know if it's really a waste, and we Nova with this combination, we do a total of 25 die 8 plus 4 die 12 plus 48 damage for a total of 186 average or 225.5 if we crit. And using this combination, our per round DPR is 14 die 8 plus 4 die 12 plus 24 or 113, which is pretty freaky. So yeah, we are some blade singing gishiness that is that's seriously gonna make our enemies rue the day they ever met us, right? All right. So for our 8th level spells, we have 2 more that are going to be really helpful for us. We pick Clone. We might draw a lot of aggro. We might really annoy the Game Master. We might really annoy the monsters. They might come after us like the Hammer of all freaking doom. So we might want to clone ourselves. And when we die, because we just pissed every enemy off in the godforsaken universe, we can at least come back and learn from our errors, or maybe not, and try the whole thing again and have fun and get waxed because we have really tweaked the enemy. In addition, I'm going to pick up teleport for the spell book. I've mentioned teleport before, and now we can do the teleporty things. Teleport is just such an awesome spell to have, and I would be remiss in failing to mention it as part of a build, especially for a mage build that is a Gish, that is an elf. I mean, come on. What are you, an elf, and not teleporting? I mean, elves teleport, right? Hey, that's, well, in Dungeons and Dragons they do. Okay, moving on to level 19. Now we have access to the glory that is 9th level spells. And I'm just going to go right into it. We pick Meteor Swarm for our spellbook. Oh, yes. And in addition, we pick Shape Change because Shape Change now turns us into an actual tank. We can pick the wonderful thing that is a Planetar and have, I don't know how many hit points a Planetar has up off the top of my head, but like all the hit points that a Planetar has, upper 100s, lower 200s, on top of our regular hit points as kind of hit point armor, as kind of this, I don't know, robot of Planetar that we shape change ourselves into, um, and do all of the awesome things that a Planetar can do on top of all of the awesome things that a wizard can do. or we turn ourselves into an adult silver dragon and become a major party enabler by paralyzing our foes with our breath weapon because, oh my god, paralysis is one of the best AoE condition riders ever, and it recharges when we recharge our breath weapon in the silver dragon form, and we can do wonderful things like carry our allies around on our silver dragon back. I mean, this makes it hard to cast Meteor Swarm, the wonderful things that you can do with shape change, right? But because we are 19th level and because we are a wizard and because we have action surge, we would be remiss not to at least occasionally drop Meteor Swarm on our foes and action surge and then beat up another one of our foes with our wicked melee nova or drop another nasty spell on top of them like Dark Star or Gravity Sinkhole or something else that just or I don't know, maybe we cast reverse gravity and then action surge and then meteor swarm them. I mean, the possibilities are almost endless. Okay, so coming to level 20, we take our final level as fighter, and we do this because we've mostly already maxed out our potential as wizard, and taking battle master fighter here really adds an edge to our fighting chops. We are now a master wizard and a master of the blade. We have synergistically forged our magic and our martial prowess into a weapon so keen that few can stand against it, right? And taking Battle Master just, I don't know, it seems very elvish to me to have these awesome maneuvers that we can add to our dexterous style of fighting and spell wielding. So for these we pick Quick Toss, Riposte, and Brace. Why do we pick Quick Toss? Well, if we are summoning our Shadow Blade, we can attack 4 times with our Shadow Blade as part of an action surge, and then for a bonus action, we can throw our Shadow Blade and then the next round reform it into our hand as a bonus action again, which is just so cool. You know, we can just make this massive nova of attacks. Riposte gives us a reaction ability to attack to add another attack to our already pretty beefy action economy. And Brace does that as well. So those are the 3 maneuvers I choose. If you want to choose some other cool things like Trip to give you more options for advantage, go for it. There are plenty of wonderful things to choose from in the Battle Master, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose some action economy. And now, because of these choices, our Nova crit round just got another boost, and I'm just going to provide one example of what we can do. There are so many beautiful pieces of Lego crit that we can snap together now with all of our various options. It's almost dizzying. So have fun, be creative. Make combinations, make names for them, the combinations. I don't know, like the one I'm going to use now with Shadow Blade and Meteor Swarm. I guess I could call it Meteor Shadow Swarm. I don't know. That's pretty dumb. We could come up with something really fun, and you could shout it out before you do it, and then boom, lay it down on the bads. But I'm going to talk about it now. So say we upcast Shadow Blade to level 7. Shadow Blade now does 5 die 8 damage on a hit. With Blade Song active and with Duelist, we are doing an additional +5. So I'm sorry, an additional +12. So 5 die 8 +12 with Shadow Blade and hopefully with advantage as well. But the first thing that we are going to do before we lay into these critters with our Shadow Blade is we are going to cast Meteor Swarm to do an average of 140 damage if they fail. And we're just going to assume that they fail. Of course, they won't always fail, but you know, we're doing this to illustrate the destructive force of this terror that we have constructed together. And so we lay down Meteor Swarm and do all the gloriousness that is Meteor Swarm for 140 damage to multiple targets. And then we wade in with our Shadow Blade and we action search. And we do a total of 16 die 8 plus 36. And then if we crit on top of that with the specific attack where we use Quick Toss, we're doing another 6 die 8 damage. So this total damage is going to be 275 for focus fire on a single target, adding in Meteor Swarm, and 140 against multiple targets. Now, with a focus fire attack, we're not doing as much damage on other focus fire builds that we've created, but boy, are we close. I mean, this is kind of close to what our Dexedin can do. We can't do it again like the Dexedin can, but boy, can we lay down some heavy heat on one round. Now, if we want to really get a little crazy on top of all this, we draw our rapier, and as an off-turn action, well, like a reaction, we riposte, and we do another 2 die 8 plus 12 for 21, getting nearly to 300 damage on our Nova round plus our reactions. So just an example of what we can do. I'm sure you guys can come up with all sorts of fun things, and I would just love, 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 love to hear about them from you. So in total, what do we have from our traditional fighter mage? We're going to bring in our wizard's familiar Crow to help us wrap up with our Gish. What do we have, Crow? We have action economy. We have 9th level spellcasting. Our action economy comes in the form of the wonderful thing that is action surge and possibly haste. We have a really, really powerful Nova due to a combination of our action surge, our spellcasting ability, our blade song, and our Gish spells, which buff our attacks. And all of this comes in one admittedly relatively fragile package. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention our hit points. At this level, we likely have around 128 unless we are getting a really cool magic item to help us out, such as the Amulet of Health, or I don't know, manuals that help us buff our Constitution score. But even so, we are definitely still not a frontliner. We might be casting things like Shape Change and Tensor's Transformation to turn us into a tanky type in certain situations. So it's worth mentioning that we do have that option. But our base core is still relatively squishy, so we need to remember that. Comparatively speaking, our other builds from Gish Optimize, the Chex Fighter has 205 base hit points at this level, and our Dexedin has 164. So we are relatively squishier than both of them. But other than that, we have so much that we can do. We have so many wonderful options, and we have, I believe, captured the original flavor of the fighter mage and taken it to new heights as we have gone all the way to level 20. So thank you all so much for joining me for this magical ride. I am going to go back to our picture of a mage casting reverse gravity, look into our chat and see that Odrin here has said hello. Hello, Odrin. I hope you have enjoyed our little Gish optimized build guide. Please feel free, those of you who did watch our stream, to come in, add some comments, add your own builds. Please feel free to critique mine. I'm more than happy to take criticism. I have, after all, written a couple of books, so if you are a writer, you're going to walk into the teeth of criticism, and I sure as heck have done that. And please just have fun with the build and use what you like from it. Like, comment, and subscribe.